mentioned, you have us folks on the Rainforest side, and then quick agenda and some housekeeping items to be mindful of as we start going through this webinar. So first, we'll go through a few different sections of Rainforest that's new. As we go along this whole webinar, we do encourage any questions that you have to go ahead and post those in the chat. In addition to posting your questions, we also will have some polls coming through towards the later half. So we definitely want this to be interactive and be a very enjoyable experience and be more engaged. And then from that as well, at the end, we will save times for any questions that you have and have more of a Q&A session towards the later half. At this time, I'm going to head and pass it over to Fred, who will start taking us through the first new features.
Cool, fantastic. So yeah, just to talk about the first little feature we have here. Basically, it's pretty nerdy, but essentially we spent a bunch of time in the last product cycle investing in the job assignment algorithm, essentially the thing that takes the tests that you run and turns them into jobs for testers, and then actually allocates individual testers to those jobs. So basically what you see here is a graph of the three really important numbers that we track on the back end, the P50, the P90, and the P95, which is basically what's the 90th percentile, what's the 50th percentile, what's the 95th percentile job turnaround time, and then where that comes from. And so what you can see here is that, especially on the 90th and the 95th percentile, there were waiting a huge amount of time in some cases before the right tester was found. And so if you look back, kind of a month ago before this was shipped, or a month and a half ago, we were seeing 95th percentile, which is, obviously rare, but in the small number of cases, you're seeing upwards of 2 hours, 3-4 hours being waited until the right tester was found for the job. And so in short, our engineers did a bunch of good work to solve underlying issues and improve the performance of the job allocation and work assignment algorithms. And so now, as you can see, in the last few weeks, we've got down to just like a massively faster, right? From hundreds of minutes down to 95th percentile average of, just slightly under 2 minutes. So nothing that you can really see like in terms of a new interface or anything, just fixing the underlying algorithms. And as you can see, it worked really well. So that should mean for you that tests are, well, the tests that sometimes take a long time, especially the ones with complex qualification criteria against them, that they are now much faster. And so, yeah, we're going to keep investing in stuff like this, which is kind of really boring, but at the end of the day means more consistent test run speeds for you. So, yeah. And I agree with you, Lindy. Fantastic work. And many Zoom pats on the back were shared when they accomplished this. So, yeah, that's work assignments. So another smallish update, but nevertheless one that some of you will be happy about, I'm sure, is Safari. So a few kind of separate but related things that we've done with Safari that I'm going to just talk about all in general here. The first and most important thing for me, because I use Safari every day, who knows why, but anyway I do, is the results videos actually work in Safari now. As you will have no doubt seen prior, if you use Safari, you would click into a nice, tester screenshot thumbnail to get to the result video, and you would just see this very annoying error message saying, sorry, we don't support this video, it doesn't work. Well, now it works, so great, yay, that's cool. And we also now support Safari 14 on the Mac as a browser that you can run your tests against. And most importantly, we now support iOS 14 to run your mobile web tests against. So I think those are all turned on for all customers. If you don't see them in your dashboard, then you should speak to your customer success manager and they will turn that on for you. And yeah, just in terms of kind of long-term plan here, as you've hopefully seen we're aiming to get, faster and faster turnaround time with turning on and enabling new browsers. And yeah, Dave just clarified for me, they're turned on and available for all customers. So that is Safari.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. From here, we're actually going to send out our first poll prior to jumping into a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and send this out. We'll give a couple more seconds here just to get some more last minute votes in. All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for voting. From here, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Masha, who will take you through a new demo in RFA.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much for coming and to see what we've been cooking up over the last development cycle. We've done a bunch of things. Some of those Fred mentioned, but on the product side, we looked at the core Rainforest experience, which is creating your tests, editing them, and executing them, or kicking off runs. And this is what I want to take you through today. And there are three components to it. Basically what I just mentioned, creating tests, editing them, and kicking them off. And they're all related. It's sort of one journey, one part of one workflow. So we try to consider the whole thing. And we had a sort of a guiding principle working on this stuff, because as we've added features to Rainforest over the last months and years, we've obviously increased complexity of the app. And every so often it's good to take a bit of a step back and look at the kinds of things that people want to do frequently and try to make them as easy as possible. But at the same time, we want to keep flexibility and power, because of all these features sort of enable interesting workflows. But we looked at how people use the app, and we try to make this sort of most common things much easier. So I'm really curious how that will impact your day-to-day tasks. So let me show you what we've done. This is the first part. As you're creating a test, and you'll probably have seen this by now, it's been in general availability for a couple of weeks. This is the new model that you see when creating a test. So even though we've seen it, I just want to quickly walk you through it and how we thought about it and why we changed things, because it also ties to the things I'll be showing you later. So first of all, if you remember the old model, we used to ask you a lot of questions up front, which was a little bit intimidating. Things like, who's the owner of this test? What is the priority? Which run group it belongs to? Things that are important, but they're probably not important at this very moment. What you want to do is create your test and start writing it. And then once you're ready, you can give the test a descriptive name and add it to run groups and stuff like this. So we go through all this, but we do ask you different questions. So first of all, if you're creating if you have native mobile app testing, you can make this choice here. For those of you who don't, this choice will not be available, and the model will just be simpler. I'll just stick with web browser testing for today. The second question we ask you is what site you want to test, or in case of mobile app, what app you want to test. And this will be useful later on, but it's also, there's a bunch of complexity in managing your sites and environments, as you probably all know. And if you want to create a test for a site that you haven't configured yet, what you had to do before is go to settings, create a new site, link it to environment, add a bunch of URLs, and it was like a matrix of combinations. And it's very powerful, but it does take a bit of getting used to. What you can do now, if you want to create a new test, you can just enter the URL here, and what will happen is we'll just create this site for you in the background and set everything up in the way that you need it. So I'm going to continue my tradition of testing Airbnb just to keep things consistent. So I'm going to create a new site, that's like that. And the final thing I want to show you is this choice of how this test should be created. And this is basically, we've changed the presentation a little bit and other explanations, so hopefully it's clear, but it's the choice between making a test that will be executed either by automation or by testers. You'll be able to choose. Or if you choose the second option, these tests will only be executed by the tester crowd. And this is the sort of old interface, or the previous interface where you specify your test in line by line and you tell testers what to do. These cannot be automated. You can still create them. And we default to the first choice because we think this is the sort of the future, basically, of how most tests should be created. But if you make a different, whichever choice you make, and you create a test, next time you open this model, we'll just preserve this choice because we basically just want to get out of your way. And if you create these tests all the time, then this choice will be preserved for you. So let's jump in and show you the test creation view. This is something that some of you might have seen already. Those of you who we've asked to work with us on the beta. And there are a couple of things that are obvious about this new view. Probably the most obvious one is we've changed the layout and we'll move things around. For example, the list of actions is now on the left, not on the right. And this is the most obvious one, but it's sort of probably the least exciting for me. And there are some other things that are much more subtle, but I think more important. Just to mention about the layout, we didn't remove anything. We just rearranged things to hopefully make them more obvious and easier. So things like the run history for this test is here. In this case, it's empty because this test, I've just created this test. But if you have some runs, they will be linked to from here. Settings is where all the things that we used to ask you upfront are now located. So you can set priority and which run group it belongs to and so on. And also platforms. And that's interesting. I'll mention it in a second. And also you can disable this test and that would take it out of any run groups it belongs to temporarily. And you can set it to draft, which a lot of our test writing authors use. And some of you use it as well. But it is a bit of a niche feature. So that's why we put it here as well. And now I mentioned the platforms, and this is something that is interesting, and it was kind of possible before, but it's much easier to do now. You can basically set a platform that is specific to this test, and different tests might have different platforms. And depending on what you choose here, we'll load a different virtual machine for you up front. So before I get to that, let me just point out, you've probably noticed, but as I open this test, I didn't have to push a button to get a new VM, and I didn't have to navigate to the page I want to test. All this just happened for me. I opened the test, and I'm dropped onto the page that I actually want to test, which makes sense, and it's something we we have all the information to do now because we ask you for this information up front, what site you want to test. So does that. But if I change the settings here, for example, if I want to test on our brand new Safari 14 virtual machines that Fred just mentioned, instead of Chrome on Windows 10, I can do this here. As I change this, a little warning will pop up saying that, hey, you currently have a VM open that is Chrome, and you've just made this test default to Safari. So consider that as you're editing your test and adding screenshots and so on. But it is nothing prevents you from doing it, just something to keep in mind. I can now reset the VM to actually get the Safari that I requested. I also want to take you through creating this simple test, even though this part, the list of actions and how you create them, didn't really change since the last time. But how you interact with them and sort of how they behave changed just a tiny bit. So for example, these spinners, we just unified the look and feel of everything. Hopefully it's much more obvious now which action is being executed at any given time. We've renamed some things. So what used to be a little play button at the top is now this big button here on the bottom. And we've called it preview actions because that's basically what you're doing. So let me demonstrate by just creating this test. And the test will be, I want to enter Paris here and search for locations in Paris and verify that the right thing appears. So I'm going to create fill action that types Paris into this box. Doing a bit of escapism here to imagine that we can actually travel in these times, but hopefully that will be the case soon. I'll give these elements names to just to keep the test nice. And as I create actions, I'm going to preview them to make sure they work. So right now, as this action is being played, the terminal tells me this is previewing this action, and I can't control it until I can control the terminal until it passes. So now it finished, the action is green, and that's all basically like it was before. Let's create 2 more actions. One to click on the search button and preview it just like before. And the last action, with the last action, I'll just verify that we're in the right place in our test. Oh, what happened here? Joys of Love demo. I thought I clicked. Let's just try this again. Did we just find a bug in Airbnb? I did type Paris. That's very interesting. Okay, well, I wish well, we have it captured on video. Maybe we'll submit it to them as an improvement request. So the last thing I wanted to do is make sure that this heading is visible. And now we have our test. I'm going to save it. And one other sort of small convenience improvements is if you don't have any actions selected and you just click preview actions, all of them will start playing. And with 4 actions, that is not really that important. But if you have 104 actions and you're somewhere at the bottom and you just finished editing your test and you want to make sure everything works, you can just click that button and then it will go from the top and execute everything. I'm going to stop the preview because we don't necessarily want to wait for it to complete, but I just wanted to show you that all this is doable. I can also change the title of this test, of course, and that's an Airbnb search test. And that's all as it was as well. So this sort of closes the second part, which was editing of tests. The final thing I want to show you is how to kick off the tests, so how to create runs. So this is a model that allows you to do that. And you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, it hopefully looks similar to the first model I was showing you. And a small thing to mention there, well, small for you, well, big for us. But we started using a design system. And hopefully every piece of the application we touch from now on will be looking more and more consistent and sort of similar to each other, and also just prettier. Before that, we had a bunch of different features and had similar behaviors, but were slightly different. Now we're going to be we try to be much more consistent, and that hopefully will make your experience better as well. But the main part about this model is that it's actually contextual, as in depending on where you launch it from, it will look slightly differently. So right now I've launched it from the single test view. So I have the options reflect that. So what I can do is I can execute this test using our automation service or our tester community, as I mentioned before. I can choose an environment. I only have a single one here. And I can choose a different platform to execute it on. So right now, I'm not going to start a run because I want to show you other things as well. So now I have 3 tests. If I select 2 of them and try to run them, I'll get this almost the same model, but there will be some differences. First of all, the name is different. That's not the most important thing. I can now set the platform, and this platform will affect both tests, right? Because both of them will be executed on this same platform. But that's only the case if I don't go to additional options. Additional options is something that we put things in here that are, again, important, but probably not the ones that you want to that you will need to touch every day. So I'll cover the top one at the end. There's location. So some of you want to have your RVMs appear to be located in Canada or Australia, and if you have this feature enabled, you can change the location here. You can also enter some identifier for the version of the software that you're testing, so you know which one was testing which version. Commonly, this is something like a git commit SHA or some other identifier. But again, if you use it, you're most likely using it from the CLI. And not something that you want to do every day from here. But the important thing I want to demonstrate right now is individual test settings. So right now this is disabled, which means that even though each one of those two tests that I've selected, they have different browsers selected as their default. So if you open the test, this sort of two different platforms or browsers open. If I run in this way, they will both execute on Chrome Windows 10 because that's what I've selected. However, if I enable this, things will look slightly different. So now I can tell that based on the settings, this test will execute in Safari 14 and this one will execute in Chrome Windows 10. So depending on your use case, this might be an important thing for you. And again, that's the kind of thing that gives you flexibility. The last place, and that's related to that, the last place you can launch this model from is a run group view. And just to demonstrate it, I'm going to add this test that I've just created to run groups, so you can see what the differences are there. Okay, so the test is added. I'm going to refresh these two tabs. And I said we want to give you the opportunity to do things that are powerful without going through lots of trouble. And with something like test level settings, that is something that is a little, you have to be careful how you set this up. So if you had to do this every time, it will be sort of a burden. But you can set this up per run group. So this run group, for example, is configured to have the test level run settings. So when I run it, it will automatically just fall back to that and it will run it on different browsers. This other run group has 3 tests and and is configured to only use just one platform, which is Chrome Windows 7, and all tests will run on that. So this is a way you can set things up once and then basically not have to worry about them. And if you kick off this run group from the CLI as well, that will be covered. And finally, because this test has both automatable and non-automatable tests, you can execute it using a mix of testing community and the automation service, or just testing community if you want to have everything done by our testers. Okay, I've covered a lot and went a little bit deep. I hope that was useful for you, and I'm very curious to hear what you think and how it will impact your work. Most of the things I showed you are already generally available. The new test view, we're going to release it to everyone in the next couple of days. So if you have any questions, I would love to hear them.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for running through that with us. I'm going to launch our final poll. And then after this, I'll let Fred jump back in with some final thoughts and we'll finish up with a Q&A.
Cool. So while we let the poll results come in, yeah, I think the main thing to say is we just wanted to go a bit deep on the new Rainforest Automation update with Maciej, because he's the genius behind it. And yeah, it's been really exciting to see so much testing being done on Rainforest Automation. We are obviously, monitoring the progress of the product across the platform, and we see a lot more tests on a monthly basis being created and run in Rainforest Automation. So yeah, if you've been waiting to try it, now's probably a good time. And we'd love to know on the poll what feature you'd most like to see next. But yeah, I think just to talk a bit, very briefly for a couple minutes about really what we're working on and what you can expect to see coming from us in future webinars, and more importantly, what you can expect to see coming from us in rainforestqa.com. A couple of things to touch on. The first is the Rainforest Automation roadmap. As it stands today, Rainforest Automation has a subset of the features of plain English. Right? So basically, some of the things that we have in plain English are supported, some of them are not. And so basically there's like a cross section of some things are well supported, some things are not well supported. And so really, one of the key things that we're working on now is making sure that all of the things that you rely on to use Rainforest for testing are supported in Rainforest Automation as well. So a couple of examples would be, really good support for cross-browser testing. Another example would be great support for embedded tests, right? There's a lot of other little things where plain English has great support for them, where Rainforest Automation doesn't. Another example would be dynamic data in tests, right? I want to use a step variable to have a test to log in, and then I want to check that some other dynamic aspect of the interface updates accordingly. That's not well supported today in Rainforest Automation. So basically, a hugely important part of our roadmap is making sure that we get Rainforest Automation to the point where you can do everything in it that you could do with plain English, except, of course, ask subjective feedback from the testers. So that's the key focus with Rainforest Automation. And yeah, we're going to keep working on it until basically everything you can do in plain English, you can do in RFA. And not just do it, but obviously do it against a robot or a human, depending on what kind of feedback, what kind of performance you want. And that's just a huge focus for us as a business. Hopefully, the other thing that you've seen from us is that the new features, the new products that we've been shipping have been a lot higher quality than perhaps some of the work we've been doing in the past. We've taken a really hard look at what has been good and what's been bad about Rainforest from kind of our perspective as super users of our own platform, as well as from all of you, our customers. And it's been really clear that we have not always shipped features, we've not always shipped products which have the best level of polish, which have the best level of kind of like user research and thought that have gone into them. And very often we've had a lot of potential for improvement in various different parts of the platform. So yeah, that's another big focus for us now, is going across the entire platform. And you've seen it in the Rainforest Automation updates that Maciej showed you. You've probably seen it in the new create test dialog. You've probably seen it in the new run test dialog. But basically across the entire platform, we are going through and applying like a much more critical eye at design, user experience, user interface, and we're just going to keep investing in that because as the results in the poll just showed, right, what everyone wants is easier maintenance from Rainforest Automation. Us too. We now have a large test suite in Rainforest Automation, and we want to make that easier to maintain those tests, because that's the core cost, right? And a huge part of that is basically figuring out how to make it really easy to use and really intuitive. And so we're going to keep working on that relentlessly. And that's a big focus for us internally, is how do we take the features and functionality that Rainforest has today? Rainforest is a super deep, broad platform that you can do a lot with, but all too often it's too hard to use that. All too often it's easy to get confused or distracted because it's just not well enough designed. And so that's where we're spending a lot of effort over the next few months as well. Cool. So, do we have any questions? Please shoot us questions now if you have any. If you don't, then if questions come up in the future, or if you are watching this as a recording, obviously please hit up your customer success manager or hit us up through the intercom chat bubble. We're always happy to speak to you, and we have a fantastic support team that's very quick to respond. So we have a question that looks like it would be well answered by Mr. Maciej.
Sure. So when I was setting off the mixed test run, there was an option to run the test using automation or crowd. Can automated tests be run using the crowd? So I set automated test. Can I set off a run using the crowd? Yes, you can. So if you have, let's just say, a single automated test and you want to run it, you can run it using the crowd. And what will happen is that we'll turn the automated instructions into human instructions that testers can read, together with the screenshots. So they'll, with the example that I was showing, there will be a sentence, click on the search button, and the search button will be sort of highlighted. The tester can hover over and see the screenshot that corresponds to the search button. So every test that you write in this way, using this view that I was showing you, can also be executed with the crowd. And in the run model that I was showing you, if you have a selection of tests or a run group, and some of them are automated and some of them are not automatable, so they have some human component in them, you can select this option, automation and crowd, and then whatever test can be automated will be run automatically, and all the human tests will be run by the human crowd. Yep. Thank you.
Fantastic. So it looks like that's all of the questions we've got from today. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And yeah, one other question. Maciej, another one for you, I think.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think the easiest way is to use test writing service. If you have that, you can submit a request for a test to be rewritten, and our test authors will basically read your test and give you back an automated test. That's currently the easiest way. We're trying to find as easy ways as possible to make that experience quick. But obviously you can do it yourself. Just go line by line. That's a little bit time consuming depending on your test suite. But our test authors are really happy to do this for you as well.
Yeah, and if you don't have access to or don't know what test writing service is, hit up your CSM. And yeah, on the near term roadmap for us is making the translation experience a lot more intuitive. So like near term, as in the next 6 months, I think you can expect to see from us something which could translate plain English tests into Rainforest automation tests. Like I said, super important for us to get to the point where every one of your tests can live inside Rainforest automation and then can be run against a robot or the crowd. It's not to say that you should all be using automation all the time, but more like we know that the optionality there is really important, right? And why not have a test that can be flexibly run against both, so you can choose rather than be constrained to just run against the crowd with the limitations that has. So yeah, anyway, like I was saying before the question came in, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. And we will see you in another 8 weeks when we have more to talk about. In the meantime, again, please hit up your CSM or hit up our support if you have any questions. And yeah, thank you very much, Mary-Kate and Dave, for organizing. And thank you to Maciej for the demo. And we will see you soon. Bye.